Robert Spencer is obviously one of the great counter-jihadists of our time, and once the fog of political correctness and willful idiocy lifts from our planet, I think history will recognize how important people like Robert were to the defense and preservation of Western civilization. However, being a warrior for freedom and human rights doesn't mean you're exempt from criticism, and Robert happily acknowledges this, which is why he puts his claims on the table for discussion and debate. I agree with almost everything Robert says about Muhammad and the Quran, but there are exceptions, in this case, a very important exception. On April 23rd, Robert's new book, Did Muhammad Exist?, comes out. Now, since I haven't read it yet, I don't know exactly what position Robert's going to take. I don't know if he'll be arguing that Muhammad definitely didn't exist, or that he probably didn't exist, or that we just don't know if he existed. But based on the descriptions that have been posted, it sounds like Robert's going to be defending a pretty controversial position. And I happen to disagree with any negative answer to the question, did Muhammad exist? I believe we can know beyond any reasonable doubt that Muhammad was a real person. I would even say we can know quite a bit about Muhammad's life. So, Robert and I have a disagreement. What am I going to do about it? Am I going to send him threatening emails? No, he's got plenty of those already, courtesy of the religion of peace. Am I going to send out complaints and get his speaking engagements canceled? No, that wouldn't prove he's wrong. It would only make me a coward, like the lovely folks over at the Council on American Islamic Relations. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to respond to Robert's arguments. I can only imagine how confused Care and Isna are right now. They hear that David Wood is going to respond to Robert Spencer, and they think to themselves, what does David mean when he says he's going to respond to Robert's arguments? We thought that when you disagree with someone, you just call him a bigot and ignore his arguments. So what's this new way of dealing with arguments that David is talking about? Glad you asked. You see, when Robert offers an argument for his position, I'm going to offer a more persuasive argument against his position. When Robert presents evidence that he's right, I'm going to present stronger evidence that he's not right. I think Care and Isna and the mainstream media are still confused, but let's try to be patient with them. All this talk of arguments and evidence can be quite intimidating to people whose only contribution to human discourse is the mindless repetition of the word Islamophobia. Maybe an analogy will help them understand. Let's say there's a game of football, and Robert is the quarterback of a team. He's marching towards the end zone in order to score a touchdown, and a touchdown in this analogy would be a successful argument about Muhammad or jihad or something like that. Now, if you disagree with Robert, how are you going to keep him from scoring? You'd have to put an opposing team down on the playing field, right? But here's the problem. You see, Muslim organizations like Care and Isna and news organizations like CNN and the New York Times, they're not like an opposing team down on the playing field, standing in Robert's way. They're more like cheerleaders jumping up and down on the sideline, revving up the crowd against Robert's team. They're getting the crowd to boo Robert. Meanwhile, Robert's scoring touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, and Sharia's cheerleaders are prancing around in miniskirts, shaking their pom-poms, yelling, "Boo! Down with Robert! Boo! Down with people who believe in freedom of speech! Down with anyone who supports women's rights! Boo!" They're not stopping Robert at all. They're not even slowing him down. They're just trying to get people to hate his team and to avoid looking at the scoreboard, which reads 483 to 0. Now, I think we all have to admit that Care and Isna and the mainstream media, they're good at what they do. They're good cheerleaders. They're the Dallas Cowgirls of Islamic supremacism. They've managed to keep millions of people in a shatterproof bubble of total ignorance. That's quality cheerleading. But when someone like Robert comes along challenging them to a serious game of evidence and reason, all they can do is form a human pyramid made entirely of sniveling crybabies. Normally, when Robert talks about Islam, I sit back and watch and think about how hilarious it is that a fifth of the world's population can't put together an intellectual response. But I can't sit back and watch now because we're in one of those rare situations where I'm on the same side of an issue with Muslims. And if I don't say something, people are going to see Robert once again offering arguments and evidence while his critics throw themselves yet another poor me pity party. On April 23rd, Muhammad's existence comes under fire. And if Muslims won't bring a team to the playing field, I will. Islam needs a hero. I'll be that hero. So for all you Muslims who've been waiting for someone to stand up to big bad Robert Spencer, your champion has arrived. All that's left is for me to make a debate challenge and for Robert to accept. And so, turning to Robert, I say, Robert, you've had it too easy in the past, picking on poor, evidentially defenseless Muslims. But you made one mistake when you wrote your new book. You didn't realize that David Wood, Islam's champion for a day, would call you out and defend Muhammad's existence against all your criticisms. Later this month, you and I are going to be in the same city. I already talked to ABN and they've agreed to host a little debate on whether Muhammad was a real person. So, if you doubt Muhammad's existence, if you think the evidence is on your side, if you really believe that your arguments can stand up to brutal cross-examination, here's my gauntlet. And here's me throwing it down.